on it. And it's not just haiku, but a few other arts that are so kindly shared by Seo Shihan Sensei. And I will let Shihan Sensei introduce himself, and you will be treated with three different arts that he actually heads up and leads through the Japanese Culture Center. So um, why not waste any more of your time and you can kind of meet him for yourself.
Let's go.
Hi, welcome to Ikigai, our virtual festival. One of the things that gets me out of the mornings, weapons. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the other things that I do too, but I'm going to talk about weapons. One of these, this is a Turkish bow that I like to use, a very short bow. I also train with the Yumi in Kyudo, but with the Turkish bow, this is more of a horseback bow. Really fun, really nice. We use the same type of, if in Kyudo we use a glove, right? And we squeeze it in. Traditional Asian, you're going to use a thumb, not the Mediterranean, which you see in a lot of different things. You'll see that, but we're using a thumb draw, and you can hear it hitting the target back there. It's enjoying going home. That's what all I want to do. And we shoot I didn't use them, but we use a thumb ring so that you can train with your thumb ring. That's one part of weapons that gets me up every morning and training. The other one that I use, besides the sword, is the bow shuriken from Meifushin Kageru. We have 5 shuriken. Throw them down range for you. Over to the left of the arrows here. Of course, with an arrow, you're going to shoot farther distance. With a shuriken, I'm going to move a little closer. I am shooting in what we would call shooting in a makawari, or in different Asians you would call it gaojin practice, which is a close range. You're not going to be shooting far, especially I'm out in my own practice range here in Chicago. So I practice more at gaojin. I'm going to do just 5 quick strikes with the shuriken. And those are the kind of things that get me up in the morning and keep me moving. I will also go into a couple other things later, but just wanted to do this while I was outside and share this with you guys. And that's the final bit on the target. It's got 3 arrows in him and 5 shuriken in him. So lots of fun. Hello. A moment ago you saw me with one of the things that I enjoy doing and demonstrating that for our Ikigai, our virtual festival. Wanted to talk to you now about something else that I really love, and it gets me moving every day, and that is haiku. I am the haiku instructor at the Japanese Culture Center and have been for over a decade now. I'm also the Buddhist lay chaplain at the Jesse Brown VA Hospital. I teach Japanese yoga at the Jesse Brown Hospital as well. I am the sensei for Meifushin Kageru, which is a traditional Japanese weapons ru or school that we have here in Chicago. And I teach other various arts as well as Hanko, which is a name seal carving and different things like that. But I'd like to talk at this moment about haiku, what it is, its history, ideas, and also what it is not. So let's begin by defining what a haiku is. Most people immediately, when I ask this in class, they'll say it's a 575. First thing I want to is have you set that aside for a moment, because it's not 575 traditionally in English. And we'll get more into that. But a haiku is, as defined by various journals, this has been agreed upon, is a short poem that uses imagistic language to convey the essence of an experience of nature or the season intuitively linked to the human condition. So I'm going to read that again, so I have it exactly right. A haiku is a short poem that uses imagistic language to convey the essence of an experience of nature or the season intuitively linked to the human condition. In simple terms, it's a snapshot of a moment where nature and humanity connect. It is that moment that we have the overlap, as we say in a Venn diagram, you have the overlap of the two. So that is the definition of a haiku as generally accepted in journals like Haiku International, things like that. That is what is accepted as a traditional haiku. There are forms such as senru, but that's a different topic. Now let's talk about the history of haiku and where it came from. It comes out of the longer form of haiku of poetry called the ringu. It was popular in the 13th and 14th century. And the very first part of the ringu was something called a hoku. And this was a 3-line verse containing 575 sounds that is the ancestor of haiku. It also set the tone and the season for the ringu. So, as you can see with that, you have this ringu, which is a much longer, it's a collaboration between 2 or more poets, also became a drinking game, things like that. Imagine how that probably was quite fun at the end. And it would go back and forth between poets. But it started off, the person chose the first hoku sets the season. So if it starts in summer, the next person, if they want to change the season, has to go to the season next, which would be fall, as opposed to they can't jump all the way back around to spring. So it kind of sets the tone and the theme and the season of it. So that's a little bit about the history of it. We'll say that most haiku journals worldwide are in English now, not in Japanese. So if you're going to think about submitting and you write in English, you're going to be good. If you're going to submit, what you might want to do is look and read their requirements, because some will require different types, different things. So keeping that in mind, let's move on to what I said about the sounds. The hoku was 575 sounds. It's a sound or on or onji in Japanese. So they're not syllables as we think of in English. They are sounds. Like haiku, and I'm going to bring up the word haiku, right? Right there. Haiku is ha-i-ku if it's written out. It's 3 sounds, not haiku, like we say in English. That little one in the middle. Onji is a sound, and it consists of a single vowel sound combination of a consonant and a vowel, or a single consonant. So each onji, or syllable, is about the same length as the syllable be in English. Think about that for a second. So in English, they can be really long words and have 1 syllable. They can be really long words and have a plethora of syllables. So, keeping this in mind, the average haiku in Japanese contains 5 to 6 words on average, while the English haiku contains 17 onji or more, which means 12 or more words. So, as you can see how that 575, if you hold to it too tight, you can end up with making a very long, difficult haiku, trying to force it to fit. And one of the things about haiku is that you want it to flow. You want it to just come out smooth. Shouldn't be forced. It shouldn't be clunky. Shouldn't have alliteration. It shouldn't have those type of things. So you want to keep it, what I like to say it is a 1 breath rule. If you can recite your haiku in 1 breath, then it has brevity. It is short. You do not want to have I, and, of, it, be, is, because when you add those in to make it fit 575, what you've ended up doing is making it forced and not natural. And if remember, we're talking about nature and the human condition. If something is not natural, then we have already not made a haiku. So that's a little bit about brevity and length of the haiku. Generally, it is accepted 3 lines, short, long, short for the haiku, and then from there we can change it. There are haiku journals such as the modern haiku, which is like going to the Museum of Contemporary Art versus going to the Art Institute. You're going to see some different things. Excuse me. And you may not at first think, oh, that's a haiku. Or you may think that's not a haiku, but then if you look at it, you may see that it still has that, but it's modern haiku, so it's going to be a little different. It may not be the traditional, and if you like to be that type of haikuist, Modern Haiku is your journal. If you want to be more traditional, Haiku International, published in Japan, is more along your lines. But in addition to brevity, a haiku should have the following things. Akigo, K-I-G-O. It is a word or phrase that helps identify the season of the experience that is recorded in the poem. So Akigo, it is, once again, it is a word such, if I say Christmas trees, candy canes, pumpkin, hot dogs, fireworks, Easter eggs, Oban, Della de Morte. Depending on what words I choose, it sets the time and frame for the haiku. Think back to the Ringu. It sets the season, right? So we have that seasonal attachment to it. You can choose, there are lots of places you can take a look, and there's an app I like called 72 Seasons, and not this is not a paid promotion, I just like the app, that you can go in and it will break down the seasons from within Japan down to micro seasons, so that you can see that, I believe we just started what's called First Winter. And then inside of First Winter, there will be specific micro seasons. So if you make a reference to, say, daffodils, that's a reference to a certain specific season within Japanese culture. The daffodils may bring to your mind, if you're in Western culture, when you see them, spring, those type of things when they first come up, or robin, spring, type of things like that. So that's a little bit on Kigo and what you're thinking. You also want to be very careful with the use of them, because it can be a cultural relevance. I had a student that is in Arizona, and she was talking about quail, and for her, quail and birds are there all the time, because it's not like we have here in Chicago where it gets cold. So if I read her haiku, I read it with a different perspective than maybe what she has, because she sees things differently from her area. So it's kind of an interesting how it can be tied into different ways. Another important concept for a haiku is called a kuriji. And kuriji doesn't have a direct translation. It means cutting word, kind of, but it's a placeholder so that the verse has the right number of feelings, moras. It has a function to also set a certain emotional or sentimental flavor, kind of like a cadence. One of the things that I think of, if you are familiar with your musician, you may know caesura or rest pause. And in your haiku, even just a slash or a dash might be in the proper place, sets the cadence or the kuriji, so it acts as a kuriji. So just kind of interesting to think about that. It helps to focus the haiku on the area that you want. And hopefully you'll take a class with us and we can discuss this and give examples of where the kuriji breaks, and how if you break the haiku in certain forms, in certain ways, you'll get a different taste of it, a different feel for it. Speaking of taste or feel, you want to try to put as much into your haiku with all of the senses. And remember, we have, we know the five senses, right? But we also have a sixth sense, and that's your brain. This is what interprets everything. So these five senses, if I can read your haiku and I can smell the leaves, I can hear the rustle of them, I can imagine the taste of the air on my tongue, I can feel the crispness of it on my skin, the air, things like that. You want to put as much into the short, no more than 17 words into a haiku that gives a lot of depth to it, and it pulls it out, and that makes it much more painterly, to use a artistic term, than realistic, because you want to just add all this depth and layers to it. So, kind of talked about it, and that haiku is much deeper than just counting syllables and cutesy little images. There's another class that we do, it's on jisei, which are death poems, which are not just for, seppuku, but also for people who are writing haiku before they pass on. I myself, every time that I get ready to go into a surgery, I write a jisei, prepared for if I don't come out of it, and it also acts as a last will and testament. People going into battle, they would write them and tuck them inside their, tops and armor, so that people would, if they found them, they would know and hopefully deliver that message to their family. So there's a lot of depth to haiku, so much more that can be said about it, and I hope that you'll join us at the Japanese Culture Center and maybe explore this with us and open up your haiku eye, as I like to say, because once you've started being aware of the things that are around you and start writing, it'll never close back again. But I wanted to say thank you for spending time with me today, and please contact the Japanese Culture Center to find out more about our upcoming classes. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Shihan Sensei. I think there's so many things that he has to teach at the center that there's just no limit to how much time you could spend with him. And yes, you can know him as Fierce Buddhist in the chat right now. So if you want to ask him questions,
yes,
I'm sure he's here for it. I'm sure of it. So thank you so much. And like he mentioned, the arts that he practices, Kyudo, which is the bow and arrow, and just to make sure I don't missay, Meifuku Shinkageru, which is like the throwing stars. Like that's the group here in Chicago that learns that martial art, as well as haiku and all kinds of other arts. So if you want to connect with Shihan Sensei, this is the space, and you can find out more about his classes on our website too.
Yeah, and there's a link in chat. Fierce Buddhist also says next class in haiku starts tomorrow, so act fast if you're interested.
That's right. It is a really great season for haiku, as there's so many cool things to observe, good ones, and those like small observances that you can throw into a haiku. Guess what those are? Ikigai, totally. So just gonna keep them coming, guys.
Smooth.
So coming up, we have one of I think both of us have a lot of love for this group. The Mugai Ryu Iaido group at the Japanese Culture Center, which is sort of like traditional Japanese swordsmanship. And they are such a fun community and such a cool group of artists. They collaborate on all kinds of events with us, from at the Surgical Science Museum, where we talk about death poems and we talk about seppuku, because they're down for all those conversations. And we do lots of cool things at like Logan Theater about samurai movies with them. So they're a really fun group, and they do a really cool art, which Derek has actually dabbled in. So Derek, what do you want to add?
Well, I originally, my interest in joining Iaido was long withstanding since being a part of the.
Thank you so much to Shihan Sensei. I think there's so many things that he has to teach at the center that there's just no limit to how much time you could spend with him. And yes, you can know him as Fierce Buddhist in the chat right now. So if you want to ask him questions,
yes,
I'm sure he's here. I'm sure he's here for it. I'm sure of it. So thank you so much. And like he mentioned, the arts that he practices, Kyudo, which is the bow and arrow, And just to make sure I don't missay, Meifuku Shinkageru, Meifuku Shinkageru, which is like the throwing stars. Like that's the group here in Chicago that learns that martial art, as well as haiku, and all kinds of other arts. So if you want to connect with Shihan Sensei, this is the space, and
Mhm.
you can find out more about his classes on our website too.
Yeah, and there's a link in chat. Fierce Buddhist also says next class in haiku starts tomorrow. So act fast if you're interested.
That's right. It is a really great season for haiku, as there's so many cool things to observe, good ones, and those like small observances that you can throw into a haiku. Guess what those are? Ikigai, totally. So just gonna keep them coming, guys.